Welcome to the Multicultural Grants Program online grant tutorials. In this video, we will discuss the common avoidable grant writing mistakes and their solutions, including selecting the correct grant category, providing enough information, painting a realistic picture, and avoiding common budget mistakes. For more information on the Multicultural Grants Program, you can view the online grant tutorials, read the frequently asked questions, download the funding guidelines, or contact the Multicultural Affairs Grants team. A significant portion of applications to the Multicultural Grants Program are found to be ineligible for funding. Applications can be ineligible for many reasons. Some are unavoidable. For example, if the applicant is not a multicultural organization. In most instances, ineligible applications are the result of simple, avoidable mistakes. The most common mistakes are: the application is missing documentation, the requested budget items are ineligible for funding, or the applicant selected the wrong funding category in the application form. It's a good idea to review your application before you submit to make sure that you're not making any of these common mistakes. The Celebrate Together and Expand Together grant streams each have multiple categories. The category you select will change the information required and the questions available to you in the online application form. This is why choosing the right category is so important. If you are applying for a Celebrate Together grant, you will have a choice between a small grant or a large grant. Choose the category depending on the total cost of your project. Keep in mind, large grants require more information, such as evidence of funding to meet matched funding requirements. If you are applying for an Expand Together grant, the categories are more complex. You will have the choice between an equipment grant or an infrastructure grant. Both categories are further divided into either the small grant or the large grant categories. It is very important that you select the correct category for your project. If your goal is the purchase of equipment only, select the equipment category. However, if your project involves an upgrade to building facilities, you must select the infrastructure category. Because infrastructure projects require additional supporting documentation, such as evidence of building ownership, projects combining both equipment purchase and building upgrades must be submitted under the infrastructure category. Applicants must provide enough information to ensure their application can be assessed against each of the criteria. If your application is missing information specific to the eligibility criteria, such as an eligible ABN, constitution, end of financial year report, or quotes for items $100 or more, your application will not be funded. If information is incomplete, your application may score poorly against the assessment criteria. If insufficient evidence is provided, items may be deducted from the eligible grant request. Providing enough information can be the difference between an ineligible or an eligible application. It can also be the difference between a weak or a strong application. It is best to write your application as if the person reading it has zero knowledge of your organization or your project. For example, even if you are applying for a grant to support an annual festival or event, be certain to still explain why the event is happening, who it is for, and exactly what it involves. Even if you have received funding for the same event in the past, the assessment panel will be different. Do not assume they know anything about your event. The assessment panel can only assess your application based on the information it contains. Applications must demonstrate your organization's capacity to deliver your proposed project. This means providing information that is reasonable and realistic. Avoid overestimating predicted outcomes. For example, the number of attendees at events or the number of community members who will benefit from the purchase of new equipment. Avoid requesting budget items that are unnecessarily expensive or do not have a direct benefit to the community. Do include a project plan that demonstrates the individual steps you will take and the timelines for delivery. Make sure timeframes are realistic and achievable within the grant term. By following these simple suggestions, you can avoid making common budget mistakes and ensure your application is eligible for the maximum funding amount. Review the funding guidelines to ensure all budget items are eligible. Any ineligible items will be deducted from your grant request. If you're not sure, contact the grants team before the application closing date. Attach a quote from a supplier for every budget item of $100 or more. Quotes must include the supplier details, the item description, and the amount. Do not provide a document with links to web pages. Links will not be opened. Any budget items without a quote will be deducted from your grant request. Make sure your budget request is aligned with the quotes provided. For example, do not round up your request to the nearest $10 or $100. Any negative variation in the quotes provided will be deducted from your grant request. Check the requirements for GST. If your organization is registered for GST, you must exclude GST from your budget items. If your organization is not registered, you must include GST in your budget items. Keep thorough records and receipts for payments made during your grant term. This will be essential when it is time to report on your grant expenditure. If you are unable to provide sufficient evidence that the grant has been expended on approved budget items, you may be invoiced for the return of funds. Watch the online grant tutorials on budgets and match funding available on the Multicultural Affairs website. It is important to always read the funding guidelines. Every grant round in the Multicultural Grants Program will have its own guidelines. These can be downloaded from the Multicultural Affairs website from the date the round opens. Anyone applying for a grant through the Multicultural Grants Program can request feedback on their application before they submit. The grants team can review your application against the eligibility requirements and provide advice to help ensure your application is complete and ready for the next stage. To request feedback on an application in progress, contact the grants team at least 1 week before the closing date. There are simple steps all applicants can take to avoid common grant mistakes and improve their application's potential to receive funding. Contact the grants team to discuss your application. The team is available to answer your questions from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. You can reach the grants team by email at multicultural.sa.gov.au or by phone on 1300 239 468.